coughing, chest pain, weight loss, and fatigue. With proper treatment, TB can be cured, but its drug-resistant forms pose a challenge to public health efforts. So far, recorded, we have 75 million lives that has been saved since 2000 globally to end TB. 10.6 million people fell ill with TB in 2022 and 1.3 million people died of TB in 2022, but the goal is to end TB by 2030. The theme for this year's World TB Day is Yes, we can end TB. My guest this morning is Mr. Shitu Msliu Adekunle, Senior Nurse, State Tuberculosis and Leprosy Supervisor, State Ministry of Health, Ibadan. Good morning to you, sir. It's great to have you join us.
Good morning. Thank you very much.
Morning. How are you feeling today?
We're fine.
Awesome. All right, so we're commemorating the World Tuberculosis Day that happened yesterday, and I read some data, from the lives that have been saved from TB, over 75 million people globally, the number of people who fell ill by TB, and the people who have died by TB, over the years. So my first question this morning would be, we are 6 years to the timeline when we want to ultimately defeat TB, which is 2030. With this data that we have, do you think that we're making progress to ending TB by 2030?
Thank you very much. And good morning, all our listeners there. Yes, I'm assuring you that we are going to meet up with the targets. With the way we are going, we are making progress. And that is the essence of coming to the radio, doing the sensitization and then the strategies that we are using, to meet up with targets.
So this platform, going to the media, going for public sensitization, these are the mediums to which you think we can meet up the target, because we're barely 6 years and the data showing people who are still coming down with TB is quite worrisome as it is.
Not only coming down to the radio program, we have other activities that we put on, to meet up the target. We have some people that are working in the field.
Okay.
And searching for this, there are those that having TB. Because we have some people inside, that they don't come out until you go and fish them out. So we have some people like that we call them the CBOs. They do active case search and whatever. So it's not only this one coming to the radio. So we move to from house to house, looking for those that could present, with the symptoms of TB. Then we fish them out, and then we screen them, and then if they are TB patients, then we start them on treatment. So those are the things. So and then we do organize training for the public. The gathering was like this Okada people and then the market people, and then we do the outreaches, all sorts of things like that.
Okay. So with this strategies put in place, we're certain that by 2030, the conversation on TB would have ended, would have ultimately defeated TB. That's the goal, and I hope that happens and we see the reality of that. But let's talk about, how to potentially recognize someone with TB. You speak of, going to homes and houses. Now let's talk about the signs that I would see as an individual, even before reporting to the hospital, that informs me that I'm probably down with TB.
Okay, thank you very much. As you said earlier, when you are telling
the introduction,
during your introduction,
yes,
TB is a communicable disease, which is caused by a bacteria. We also have to let our people know that it is caused by a bacteria called Mycobacterial tuberculosis, and mostly affect the lungs. So, and then the most common symptoms is the cough. persistent cough, productive cough. And when we are looking for who is we don't call them suspect again. We call them presumptive. Who are the people presenting with cough of 2 weeks or more? So if anybody present with cough of 2 weeks or more that has been using different drugs that it doesn't go, so we presume that such person is likely having a TB, and we move further. So though we have other symptoms like a chest pain, coughing out of blood, loss of weight, the person may not be able to eat well. So those are the things we may be looking for when we go to the field. So those are the things we look when we go from house to house. So we look for those people that can present with those symptoms. Yes.
Fair enough. So how often should I be coughing that would make me worry to present myself for maybe TB screening or testing? How often should I have coughed for?
I said it's 2 weeks or more than that. Yes. But there are some people that we don't wait for 2 weeks.
Okay.
Like
Why?
NHIV people.
Okay.
So even if it's just a day, so we presume that person is having a TB and we move further to screen because of the immunity that is low in that person.
Yes.
Because of that HIV
Disease.
So you don't wait for 2 weeks. But generally, any cough of 2 weeks or more, so you presume that person is having a tuberculosis.
That's an interesting fact. Okay, I've also heard that there are people who are asymptomatic. They don't show symptoms at all. So what happened in cases where you can't detect if this person has TB because they don't show symptoms?
Thank you very much. So we have some people that if they don't come down with TB, like if we go for outreach and then everybody is tested or examined by X-ray, there's what we call latent TB. So the organism is there, but it's dormant. It's not active.
Okay.
So, but if the immunity is compromised, so it can now develop into TB. So we have people like that. So, and then even with the new development, even there's a sort of treatment for that also.
Okay.
So we call that one latent. So they will not present with
So somebody with latent TB cannot transfer it to another person because it's not active.
Not really.
Okay.
Not really. Because they don't cough. It's like even the TB, we have 2 types.
Okay.
We have the one I said earlier that it mostly affects the lungs, at least 80%. The remaining 20% will affect other parts of the body. Just name it, any other part of the body. And the first one is referred to as pulmonary TB because it affects only within the lungs. It's within the lungs. But others, they don't usually cough. And if they don't cough, they will not bring out anything, to public or to any other person to inhale. Because it's through the hair that one can contact it.
Yes.
So, but when there's no cough, so there's no way the bacteria will be transmitted into the hair for other person to inhale it.
Okay, that makes sense. So anybody with latent TB should not be worried, but they should be worried if their health is compromised.
Yes.
Fantastic. I think we're getting somewhere now. Now let's talk about the BCG vaccine. I would have thought that, as a child, after taking the BCG vaccine, I am ultimately free from tuberculosis. But I'm meant to understand that, even after taking the BCG vaccine, if you come in contact with, the virus, the bacteria, you would get affected. How true is that?
It is very true. The vaccine, not only BCG, all these vaccines we are talking about, when you take a BCG, it doesn't mean that person cannot have TB for life. But the issue is that the if at all that person has a TB, it may not have any complication. That's just the implication of having the BCG. So the BCG will prevent the complex one, the one with complications. That is what the BCG will do.
Just for the complex one.
It doesn't mean that that person cannot have TB
Okay.
at all.
Okay.
That is it.
Okay. So, like COVID, we had like booster doses. Are there any extra doses for the BCG vaccine? Or it's just that one take and that's it?
There's no booster dose. The situation where one can have but I don't think it's even it's no longer on gradual. I think so.
Okay.
It's when somebody is tested, they give a mantra or whatever, and then they see that person is having a reaction. So they do think that person should be given a BCG.
Okay.
So that is it. But now, like I said earlier, that when the X-ray is done and then detected that the person is having a latent TB, I think there's a management for that now.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, instead of giving a BCG.
You've pinpointed ESRI as one of the major ways to test TB. I know there are different forms, but you seem to lay more emphasis on the ESRI. Is it because that's like the most credible way of testing TB? Tell us about the other ways of testing TB, then you talk about the ESRI.
Oh, okay, it's not the X-ray that comes first.
Okay.
Whoever that is coughing for 2 weeks or more, we collect sample. That is the sputum sample or the stool in children.
Okay.
And these samples will be examined in the laboratory to know whether there is presence of these bacteria that we are talking about, either in the sputum or the stool in children.
Okay.
So that is the major diagnosis that we use in the program before we come down to the issue of X-ray. Then we can also use scan and some other things like that. Yes.
Because I learned that you can use like the sputum to test, and sometimes you might have the TB and the results shows like differently. It might be positive and the result comes out negative. That's why most times the result to the ESRI as the credible form of testing for TB.
When a person presents with symptoms of TB and sample is collected, the result is negative. The program says we wait for another 2 weeks. We retest the sample. If it is negative, we now go for X-ray.
Okay.
If the X-ray now suggestive of TB, so that person will be placed on treatment straight away. But you said I'm laying emphasis on the X-ray.
Yes.
When we go for outreach, like I said, the latent TB, and then even to detect earlier at times. So when you go to a big gathering, there's no way you can just be collecting sample and be just tested instantly. So, but the X-ray, when you take the X-ray will show, okay, this is what is happening in the chest of that particular person. And then even there, you can make a decision whether to place the patient on treatment or not, or to go for further evaluation. Yes.
Fair enough. Now, drug resistance has been a major setback to, the total eradication of TB in our society. So let's talk about the implication of, drug resistance TB. What even leads to that? Let's inform people. What results to you taking a drug and is not effectively working for you as a TB patient? Why does that happen?
Okay, thank you. That the drug resistance, that is when we have that's another category of TB. We've talked about the two types.
Yes.
That's programmatic, and then that's one is related to drugs, where we have a drug sensitivity, TB, and then drug resistance. So we have what we call the first line drugs and then the second line drugs. When the first line drugs is not could not be able to combat, or there is resistance to that first line drugs, that is when we now have a drug resistance, tuberculosis. And then there are the factors that could contribute to that is that at times, like we used to advocate, when someone is taking a treatment, it's good to complete it. Should not run away from treatment, should not break down, or should not stop halfway or whatever, because it's very dangerous. Because this bacteria we are talking about, when you are taking it's better you complete the treatment. If you are fail to complete the treatment, the organisms now develop, and then the way they now develop, they can form resistance. That will now be resistant to the drugs that particular person is taking. So in a defaulter patient that runs away from treatment, and then some people, if we have the other diseases in the body, I mean that person, like even the diabetes and some other things. So if the immunity is compromised, and then or if the person has been exposed to drugs somewhere, just like we have now, some of us, we first go here and there before we actually capture them, I mean the program. So they might be exposed to one or two, or I mean these anti-TB drugs. So that one, when you now try to give our own particular drugs to them, they may be resistant to it. So from there, so the bacteria we might have developed resistance to those drugs because the person has been exposed to drug initially before we detected such patients.
I'm also meant to understand that, for instance, if Mr. A is having a drug-resistant TB, and Mr. B, who has never had TB before, now inhales the sputum from Mr. A, it means the Mr. B automatically gets a drug-resistant TB.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, it's direct. The strain is the same strain that it will be transmitted to a particular person that is closer to that patient. It will not be the
initial stage of TB.
No. It is the same strain that will be transmitted to such a patient.
That is very risky.
So that is why we always look for, if we are looking for, because it's part of the preventable measure, that when we have a drug-resistant TB, and if we should get somebody from that patient, the household or whatever, we think of a drug TB also for that particular patient, because it is the same strain that we cross to the other person.
So in this very critical stage, because this is a very critical stage for TB, I'm meant to understand, is it curable as well? Is there a drug, an anti-drug that fights the resistance, especially for someone who unfortunately contacted it as a result of just inhaling whatever the drug-resistant TB patient had? Is there like a medication for that person?
Yes, like we have in the initial one, that is the drug susceptible TB. So we also have for drug resistance.
Okay.
So the drugs may just be different. It may not be the same as the first one. So, but we have drugs. It's also curable.
Okay.
So TB generally is curable and is preventable.
Awesome. So what's the timeline for these drugs? Because I think the challenge is always completing the drugs. How many weeks or months as a TB patient is required of you to take your medication so that you don't come down with a drug-resistant TB?
Yes, thank you. Now it's 6 months.
6 months?
Yes. So the person will be on.
Go ahead, sir.
So the person will be on drug for 6 months.
6 whole months.
Yes, 6 months.
Wow.
And then
For drug resistance, is it the same timeline to 6 months too?
now we have different level of
Okay.
drug resistance.
Okay. Tell
We
us
have
about
different
that.
types, but the first one is now 6 months also.
Okay.
So they have come down with there's a new development that the patient can take the drugs within 6 months and it will go. So that is for drug resistance. But if you have other resistance, it may be more than that. I mean, for the drug resistant. But for the susceptible one, it's 6 months.
Okay. 6 months timeline of effectively taking your drugs.
Yes.
But you find that Nigerians will almost never complete any drugs. I mean, take malaria for instance. You start treating malaria, and after 2-3 days of taking the drugs, you discover that you're feeling better. You stop. And that's what applies to most drugs that Nigerians take. I believe that I think that there's a program that was created for compliance. I think they call it DOT for TB.
Okay.
So does that work in, let's even use Oyo State as a point of direction now? Does DOT work in Oyo State?
Yes, it works. Even not only Oyo State, in Nigeria.
Okay.
The DOT you are talking about is DOT.
Yes,
we call it DOT. DOT. Initially, patient will go to the facility every day to take drugs. But now, while the health worker is observing him or her swallowing the drugs. But now, it's part of the strategy now that instead of patient, because it's form part of being being running away from, taking the
compliance,
drugs,
yes.
comply with the continuity of the drugs. So they now develop that when a patient is diagnosed, counseled, educated, whatever, they ask the patient to bring somebody close to him or her. It could be a mom, pastor, or one of the relatives.
Okay.
That person will now serve as a treatment supporter.
Okay.
So the patient will now be going to the facility with treatment supporter every 2 weeks to collect the drugs. It is that treatment supporter that will now be giving the drugs to the patient at home instead of patient to come to the facility every day. So as just to comply.
So far with this strategy now, has it been working for most patients that you've worked with?
Yes, it's
at the
working.
ministry?
It's working very well. It's working very well. Just after, within a week or two of starting the drugs, you look at the patient, you see the remarkable difference in them. Improvements, yes.
Amazing. Well, I think that this is one major way we can actually eradicate TB ultimately. The DOT program, when I heard about it, I was really impressed because I know that, drug resistance is a major setback to eradicating TB. And if we can have people, sign up for treatment and complete their treatment for 6 months, then ultimately would eradicate TB.
Yes.
All right, let's talk about how to get tested in all your states. So there's been a lot of discrimination around TB. People are scared of TB. You've stated that TB is a curable and preventable disease. So there's nothing to really be scared of. The much you can do, or the most you can do, is when you find out that someone is showing symptom of TB, you can take them to the hospital or you can take them to the primary health care center. Which brings me to my question. So as a person now, I find out that my neighbor, my friend, or my brother is dealing with TB. I probably would have confronted my friend or maybe reach out to my friend. This is your cough. You don't do the tail. We don't pass 2 weeks. You sure say go hospital. And the person refuses to go to the hospital because the person doesn't want to be discriminated. what do I do? Is there a call number? Is there a toll line? Is there somebody I can reach out to in the ministry that can help come down to my house and speak to the person, particularly here in Oyo State?
We have a toll line that is a 3340.
Okay,
Yeah.
3340.
Yes. So anybody can call that line, and then you can be directed.
3340.
Zero. So the person will be asked some questions. I mean, where he or she is living and whatever, and he or she will be directed to a close facility, nearest
Okay.
facility, where he or she could have a test done, and if it is TB, and then the treatment will be commenced there.
Okay. So once you called 3340,
340. It's free.
the toll line is free.
It's free.
You'll be attended to immediately
Yeah.
and be given the next line of action to take. Right.
And then in Oyo State, where we do put our even individual numbers on, even on the posters.
Okay.
That we do paste outside, I mean, in public areas.
Okay.
So if you, though that one is not free,
Okay.
but that is a personal lines. So they do call it, they do call the lines also. And
Okay.
then we do direct them to, I mean, the nearest place, or if they have any challenge, and then we solve it online. Yeah.
Fair enough. So is the treatment in itself, after calling the line and you're giving a direction to probably a primary healthcare center, is the treatment free
Yes, treatment is free. Treatment,
for
the
all
test,
stages?
test is free, while also the treatment is free, all through.
To any primary health care center in Oyo
All
State?
primary health care center in Oyo State, and not only primary health care center, we have the tertiary institution, we have the mission hospitals, we have
Okay.
even private hospitals.
Hmm.
So where the treatment could be accessed free of charge. The only thing, because I do add that in private hospital, when you get to private hospital, before they could know that you are probably we are a presumed TB patient, whatever, you
Consultation.
collect card or whatever.
Yes.
So because people do call us, but you said that it's free. When you get so private hospital, they collected a social amount from us. No, it's not like, they say they will obtain card, they will do this or do that.
Yes.
So the doctor will listen to that person, and then if you now say, okay, this is a presumed TB, okay, you now get tested. But the sample that we collected from that patient will be taken to laboratory free of charge.
Okay.
And if it is TB, the drugs is at that facility that will be given to the patient free of charge.
Okay. So, but what you're saying is, even in private hospitals, it's free, but the only money that you might be obliged to pay is consultation fee and maybe your buying of card.
Any other things, because the doctor may okay, you need to buy other drugs apart from anti-TB.
Okay.
This is a private
Organization.
profit making.
Fair enough. I think that is an acceptable hospital procedure.
Yes.
All
But
right.
in all primary health care centers, everything is free.
Okay. So now let's talk about how long does an infected environment, how long does he incubate the TB before it is dead? So for instance, someone walks into this room and the person has TB and the person coughs. How long is that TB active before another person comes in to be infected by it?
The TB has to do before one could be infected. The person must have been living with, or having close contacts with such a particular person,
No.
not just within
A radius. But I'm meant to understand that if, for instance, the person coughs and coughs on the table, spits or maybe spits on the table, and someone who doesn't have TB come and touch that particular position, the person gets infected. I've heard something like that.
touching the table, if that person spit on the table.
Mm.
You know, the problem with that bacteria is that that bacteria can enclose itself on, the dust can be there for hours or even days. And if there's it's not the touching.
Okay.
Because we said it's an airborne.
Inhaling
So that
it.
if there's air blowing, something out, and then the other person inhale it. So that person can come down with a TB.
So it's not by touching.
It's not by it touching.
Because that's what people also discriminate. So when they say, "Oh, you have TB," they don't want to touch you.
We don't discriminate any longer. Even in the olden days, they do say, okay, they do separate everything from the patient. They will put the patient in a corner of the house where he be staying alone. Even the utensils that will be using, they will separate everything. So we are no longer doing that. Because we educate the patient how he or she is contacted something. All these things we tell the patients before starting the treatment. We educate them before starting the treatment. So how to prevent it, we let them know. So even by using the handkerchief or the face mask, so that they will not be covering the bacteria into the hair.
That's awesome.
So the only one they can contact, apart from here, is that of from animal.
Oh, you can contact from animal.
Yes, that's from cow. That's from raw milk, unpasteurized milk.
Oh, okay.
So and that one may not go into the lungs. It may go to other places we have the TB abdomen. Yes.
Well, that's new to me. But ultimately, I think the message we're passing this morning is TB is preventable and TB is curable.
Yes.
And by 2030, we want to see the end of TB globally. Well, I must say thank you so much, Mr. Shito Adekunle, for coming this morning to educate us on tuberculosis in commemoration of the World TB Day that was celebrated yesterday. By extension, we're doing that this morning. This has been quite an insightful conversation, and I believed that everyone who listened would have gained, knowledge on how to live their lives, better. And I also want to remind us that the precautionary measures that we used, for COVID-19, we can't throw it away. Wearing the face mask, because you can't be so sure that the public bus you will enter will not have someone who has TB in it, and if the person sneezes or cough, you might get infected. So it's important that at every given point of your life, you must protect yourself by wearing your face masks, I believe, washing your hands with hand sanitizers and other precautionary measures that we that was stipulated by the World Health Organization. Thank you so much, Mr. Shito Adekunle, once again for being here.
Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity. I think next time you see.
Definitely. Definitely.
What's that told? We want people to really know what TB is, and it's not something that we should all be running away from.
Exactly.
And
what's
that we should not be running away
again?
from the person that is infected.
At all. No discrimination against
yes,
TB.
There should know.
What's the toll number again? Let's
3340.
3340. 3340. You can call this number and you'll be given further directives on how to, report someone for screening, to get tested, and get their medications free of charge. This is how we draw the curtains on Solutions Clinic this morning. I'll be back next week, Monday, for yet another interesting conversation in health. My name is Vic Richards. Have yourself a productive and a lovely Monday. Good morning to you.